and I started bawling outside. Do you know what that sounds like? Yeah, every book ever. Also during like the sexy scenes. Who lied to this man? Who lied to this poor man, which is supposed to be a day of love, for Christ's sake, not for gut-wrenching pain. Goes like, I don't like blood. What? Like, when did she get shot by a gun? Hello and welcome, my name's Luca if you're new here. I have not done any reading wrap-ups this year since I started my channel, I think 2 months ago. So I thought, why not do a combined reading wrap-up of January, February and March. I am a full-time student, so I have not read 20 books each month. I think I have read about 15 or 16 books since the beginning of the year, and I have also read some other books, but I won't be talking about them because I haven't finished them yet. I think I have like 3 or 4 books that I'm still reading because I stopped reading them for a while and I just kind of forgot about them. So I will not be talking about those. I'm going to talk about all the books I did finish. And since we have quite a few books to talk about, I'm going to get straight into it. I have my laptop here with all of my notes that I made while I was reading so I don't forget anything. So the first book that I read in January was called Never by Jessa Hastings. This is her first book outside of the Magnolia Parks universe. And I'm not going to lie, it was a bit disappointing, and I really thought that I was going to love this as much as I loved, you know, the Magnolia Parks universe, which I didn't. I did still enjoy it, however it was really frustrating in true Jessa Hastings fashion, and I never thought that I would say this, but I want to unalive Peter Pan. I hated him. Like, every single annotation that I made inside of this book was like, what a pig, I hate him. Why is he here? Like, I really disliked him, and I think every single person that read this book did. That was kind of the point. But this book was a love triangle between, I think, Wendy from Peter Pan, her grandchild, or even her child? I don't know, somewhere of, like, all the girls in the, I forgot their name, but Wendy from Peter Pan, all of the girls in that family line get picked up by Peter Pan to be taken to Neverland when they're 13 or something. And the girl in this book, I forgot her name. Shit. Daphne, the girl in this book, Daphne, she was not actually taken to Neverland by Peter Pan when she was 13, so I think she's now 18 or something, 17, 18, and they think that the spell is broken and Peter Pan's not going to come. He comes for her anyway, and he's also now a grown 19-year-old guy, I think. So he takes her to Neverland, and then she also meets the son of Captain Hook, and it kind of becomes a love triangle thing. Weird things also start happening that kind of really diverts from like the normal Peter Pan story. She gets acquainted with the island and everything, and she kind of builds a life there with Peter Pan as well as Captain Hook's son. And reading this book, I think everyone, me at least, had a very clear preference to which guy she should be with, but it was really frustrating. I think the second book, she's working on the second book because this is the first book in a series, so it also has like an open ending, it's not like concluded. So I think I gave this 3.5 stars because I do really enjoy her writing. However, this was not as special to me as Magnolia Parks because I gave almost all of those books 5 stars. So this was 3.5 stars. It was a bit disappointing. Looking on Goodreads, it doesn't really have great ratings and reviews, but the cover is really pretty, and I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. It was just not everything that I had expected it to be, so 3.5 stars. Then the second book I read was Mile High by Liz Tomford. This is a hockey romance where the guy is the alternate captain of the hockey team and the girl is the flight attendant on the plane that the team travels on. And I enjoyed this book, but not as much as I thought I was going to enjoy it because I had heard very mixed reviews, but it did sound like something I would really enjoy. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it, just it wasn't my favorite. What I really loved about this book though is the fact that there was a lot of body insecurity representation, which sometimes in books it can seem a bit unrealistic how hot and, I don't know, content and confident all of these people are. And I loved the fact that this girl had real life problems and struggled with something that a lot of girls struggle with. So that was fantastic to see. However, I did feel bad for her, obviously. I think the guy handled her problems really well, so that was really nice and fun and sweet to see. And he was just kind of debunking all of her insecurities as she unveiled them to him. So I loved that. However, the guy, I do understand why people don't love him, because he was insufferable sometimes. I'm not going to lie, he was kind of a douchebag at times. I did love his relationship with his best friend, and also specifically his relationship with his best friend's kids, because they called him Uncle Z because he is called Xanders in this book. And that was just so incredibly sweet. So that made me love him a lot more. However, I understand why he's not people's favorite, because he wasn't my favorite either. So, and also this book is way too long to just be a hockey romance. Like, it was a bit dragged out, which is never good. And also, I wrote something down and it's a bit harsh, but I'm going to say it anyway. I wrote down, I don't love the fact that it's trying to be deep in some parts, but it's very much doesn't feel like it, and it kind of feels forced at times. And that is, I think, what was my problem with this book, that they were trying to be deeper than it actually was. Also, the pacing of this book didn't always make that much sense to me, and I did sometimes like roll my eyes when it got like a bit too cheesy, and then afterwards I felt so disappointed that I felt that way. And I was reading it was like, these are not the visceral reactions that I want to have. Like, I want to be giggling, kicking my feet, I want to feel like butterflies, and I just didn't. However, not everything was bad, because I did keep on reading and I did finish the entire 600-page book. And like I said, there were like a lot of redeeming things, like the friendship aspects and the team aspects, and I loved a lot about this book, but just not enough to kind of weigh out the things that I didn't like. And then the last negative thing I will say about this book is the fact that I didn't really love I never loved the third act's breakup, but I did not enjoy this one like at all, because it was just really predictable, and I hoped, like, building up to the third act's breakup, that it wasn't going to be exactly like what I predicted, and it was. So it was enough, like, I liked this book enough to finish it, but I was nothing more than that. So I think it was 3 stars or something. Then I read Loathe to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. These are 3 interconnected standalone novellas. They're really short. I think all of them are between 100 and 130 pages or something, which was perfect for me at the time, because I felt myself getting into kind of a slump because I didn't love the books that I was reading all that much. So I wanted something that I could easily finish like in a few days. So I started these, and I was actually planning on reading just one of them, because I was like, well, I don't want to read an entire book at the moment, but I just want to read like something, but that would make me feel accomplished, because I wanted to finish something. So I started the first one. I read all 3 because I did enjoy them. I think I gave all of them around 3.5 stars or 3.8 stars. They were really quick, fun, easy. So if you're looking for something like that, I would really, really recommend it. However, because of that reason, they all kind of end rather abruptly. So if you do get emotionally invested into these characters and the couples, it can be a bit underwhelming because you don't get as much of them as you normally would. But I really enjoyed it because they were short and sweet, and I loved the fact that there was no unsubstantial stuff going on, because they just got right to the point. There was no third act's breakup or anything, because there just wasn't any time for that. So I personally really enjoyed it at the time. So they were around like 3.5, 3.8, almost 4 stars, but not quite 4 stars. They were just really, really great palette cleansers, and all of them were told in like kind of a then and now timeline, ranging from a few weeks to a few years of something that happened in the past, and then kind of how it led up to where they are now. And like I said, I really enjoyed it. Then I read Done and Dusted by Lila Sage, and I did not enjoy this one as well. I actually DNF'd this one because I just could not take it at one point. It was super cliche to me. So she comes back into town after a few years, and they knew each other like back when they were younger. She comes back after a few years and he is just instantly obsessed with her. And it doesn't feel like anything substantial, because he's just constantly talking about her peachy ass and that skirt. And that's fine if you also have like meaningful conversations and stuff, and I just didn't feel like they had that. However, she pretends not to like him anyway because they could never be together because of her overprotective older brother, who also happens to be his best friend. And do you know what that sounds like? Yeah, every book ever. And it was just not done well, because all of those things I could really enjoy, but I just really did not enjoy the writing style. And for some reason, the guy in this book thought that it was hot to keep calling her sugar. Also during like the sexy scenes, and he was like, do you like that sugar? And I'm like, who told this man that that was sexy? Who lied to this man? Who lied to this poor man? Because that is off-putting to me. It kind of reminded me of what creepy older uncle guys say to younger girls, and I'm like, what is happening? It just felt a bit too insta-lovey for me, because he hadn't seen her in years, and then he sees her and is suddenly completely obsessed, even though he's usually not like this. And I was just sitting there going like, really? So that was just a bit disappointing to me, and maybe my expectations were a bit too high because I had heard really great things about this book, but they just, I don't know, it just really didn't work for me. And then also a direct quote from page 59 was, after she thanked him for like helping her move, he says, as of yesterday I would do anything, anywhere, anytime for Emmy Ryder, which is the girl. And I was like, what the fuck happened yesterday other than seeing her in a skirt? Like, what did I miss? Was I not there yesterday? Because nothing happened other than you seeing her ass in a skirt. So I was just like, okay, I'm over this. But I really wanted to keep reading because I was like, well, I am kind of just starting to get out of a reading slump, so I would love it if I would finish a book. But then things just started going downhill more and more. And then there was also something that was really, really funny to me, because I was like, why the fuck are we being so incredibly dramatic? Because something happens in the book and the girl, Emmy, I didn't even say that, by the way. The girl's called Emmy and the guy is called Luke, I think. Luke Ryder, if I'm not wrong. But the girl, I don't know, during her moving around boxes, she falls down and she scratches her arm. She looks away like very dramatically and goes like, I don't like blood. And the guy grabs her face and goes, look at me, I'm going to take care of you, Emmy. And I was just like, what? Like, when did she get shot by a gun? Because I did not see any of those things happening. She fell over a fucking carton box and scratched her arm and you're acting like she's dying. And he goes, I'll take care of you. And I was like, what is happening? She's a grown-ass woman and you just put a band-aid on her. Like, he puts a band-aid on her and I just could not handle all of those dramatics. So I was, at that point, I was just like laughing and rolling my eyes and I was like, really? And that's just not how you want to feel when you're reading a book. But what I did really enjoy is she was a like famous horse rider or something, but she had an accident, so she was kind of afraid to get back on a horse, and he taught like really small children to ride horses. So he kind of starts helping her and trying to get her back on the horse because she loves horse riding and she really does want to do it, but she's just too scared. And there was this scene where he was like trying to get her back into it and they had like a very sweet conversation, and I really did like the whole thing about him trying to help her get back to doing something that she really obviously loves doing, and that was really sweet. But it was just like, in comparison to all of the things that I didn't like, it wasn't enough. And I sound so negative, but at one point I was reading with like a very sour face and I'm like, yeah, this is not working. So that was my first DNF of the year. I think it was also my only DNF of the year, but I had to stop reading because I was like, well, I'm not enjoying this and I think I'm going to rate it like below 2 stars, so no reason for me to keep reading it. Then next I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I really enjoyed this book and I think I gave it 4 stars or something. It was kind of off to a slow start, but I think I got invested around like the 185 page mark because that's when like romantic development started happening, and I really enjoyed the couple together. The girl is called Iris and the boy is called Kit, Roman Kit, I believe. So in this world there's a war of gods going on and people are kind of divided on grounds of what god they support. And Iris, the girl, she is like very poor and she lives with her mother, and her brother is off to fight for one of the gods. She herself works at a newspaper and she is competing for the same title as the boy in the book, Roman Kit. So then they start off being like kind of office rivals, even though they're both very young. I think they're like 18 or 19 or something. It's very obvious that they kind of like each other, or like kind of are just infatuated with the other person, but they don't like each other. But there's something kind of like binding them together because she has a very old typewriter and she writes these letters and kind of pushes them under the door in her closet, I think it was, and she thinks that she's writing to her brother, but then someone starts answering her letters and we know that it's not her brother. We know that it's Roman Kit, that she doesn't know that. So she is kind of falling in love with this boy that she's corresponding with through her magical typewriter. So this is one of those books where they are kind of both falling in love in real life and also through like the letters that they write to each other. However, she doesn't know that she's falling in love with the same boy. She thinks she's like starting to like 2 people. Anyway, their interactions were really endearing to me, and I did kind of notice that I was not all that invested into the world and like the politics and the gods and stuff. I was mostly invested into their romance. So in the parts of the book where the romance was not as prominent, my interest was also like a bit lower. However, we did get enough romance that my interest was like constantly somewhat peaked. And then further into the book, Iris goes off to be a war correspondent to write about the war that's going on. And as soon as she left, like my favorite part of the book began, and I really was entertained and I started reading it like very quickly. And I do really want to read the second book and I would recommend it. I think I gave it 4 stars, but just know that it's written in 3rd person if you're like me and you don't love that. Okay, sorry for the change in lighting, but it suddenly got very dark because it started raining, even though it's like 4 o'clock, so it's not supposed to be dark. But I turned on the light and I hope it's a bit better now. But the next book I read saved me because I was starting to get into a bit of a slump. I was actually already in a slump and Divine Rivals helped a little bit, but I didn't read it like very quickly and I just really wanted a book that was going to kind of make me call in sick and like cancel all of my appointments because I just wanted to sit and read. That's what I was looking for. And Elle Kennedy said, just you wait, I've got the book for you, because I read The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy and I loved it so much. And I should have known that all it was going to take was to pick up this book, because I loved Off Campus and I also loved Briar U. And if you don't know, this is a spin-off of the Off Campus and Briar U series. This is about the daughter of the people in the first book in the Off Campus series, which are like arguably the most iconic couple of the entire series, and I just love being back in this universe, and this entire book gave me so much nostalgia. And every single time like an old character made a cameo or was mentioned even, I was smiling like an idiot. Like I was kicking my feet and giggling, and I just could not stop reading this book. And it was dual point of view, which I really enjoyed, and just the banter and the angst and the tension in this book was god tier. Like it was so good. And one of my favorite things about this book is the fact that they had snarky, teasing, sarcastic nicknames for each other, and something about that is going to do it for me every single time. And these were like good nicknames, like very good nicknames. So this book follows Gigi Graham and Luke Ryder, which I now realize is the name of the guy in this book and not the name of the guy in the other book, so you can forget all about that. But it follows Luke and Gigi, and they are both hockey players, and she wants to make a national, like the Olympic hockey team or something, but she is kind of lacking in one department in her hockey skills. So they strike up a deal and he's going to help her like with the one skill that she's not very good at, and in turn she puts in a good word for him with her dad because he is his idol and he made an ass of himself or something. So they strike up this deal and then they kind of become friends, and then this kind of friends with benefits situation occurs, and then obviously they fall in love. But it was so incredibly fun, and I just love the way she writes hockey romances. And I think I would have given this 5 stars because I was so completely obsessed with it, if it wasn't for something that happened at the end that kind of knocked it down half a star for me at least, because it was, I felt like it was very out of character. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about, but I didn't love that. I don't think this book had a third act breakup though, so I did really enjoy that. But I gave it 4.5 stars, so I really loved it. And the guy in this book, Ryder, he was so closed off, but like for very good reason. And his character development throughout the book was just very good. And you kind of saw him opening up more, and also like to Hannah, Gigi's mom. And I didn't know that seeing Garrett and Hannah as parents was something that I desperately needed until I read this book. So if you've read Off Campus and you loved it, do not sleep on this one because it's super good. And I can't wait to read the other books in this series. I am kind of bummed that those books don't follow the other kids from the Off Campus series, but I have heard some things about those kids also getting books, but they're not like the same age as these kids, so I don't know how that would work. But I just know that the next book follows characters that you get to know in this book, and I'm just very excited to be getting back into an Elle Kennedy Off Campus hockey world. Like I can't wait. So that's that one. 4.5 stars, highly recommended. Then I read If Only I Had Told Her by Laura Nowlin. This is the second book in the If He Had Been With Me duet. I think she said that she wasn't planning to write this book when she released the other one. However, I am so happy that she did write this one. But this duet follows Autumn and Finn, and they have lived next door to each other their entire lives, and their mums are best friends, so they grew up together. And after the first book, I was so incredibly heartbroken, and then I read this one and it was even worse, because we got 3 points of views in this book. We got Finn's, we got Autumn's, and in the middle we got Jack's point of view, and he was Finn's best friend. And at first I was like, excuse me, what are you doing here? This story is not about you. Like, I don't want to read about you. His point of view ended up breaking my heart the most. Like, I constantly bawled during Jack's point of view, and just because of how highly he spoke and thought of his best friend, and also because of how well his feelings were depicted. This story's not real and this boy doesn't even exist. This is ridiculous. Oh my god. Like my heart was broken, and I was like, oh, all of this could have been avoided. Like, my heart was just so heavy and in so much pain while reading this book, so I highly recommend it because I would want for all of you to experience the same thing. And I was constantly debating between taking a break because my heart could not handle anything else and needing to keep reading. So I finished this so quickly. Like, this book, I was in the back of my class behind my laptop reading. I could not put this book down, and I underlined so many things, and I just my heart hurts every single time I think about this duet, and I just have so much trouble moving on from this story. Every single time I think about it, my heart actually like feels heavy and actually hurts, like as if this happened to real people. That's ridiculous, but it really, really does. And at first I was way too enthralled and like reading it way too quickly to underline anything, but the moment I finished this book, I went back immediately and just like kind of skimmed through the book and like started underlining things that really stuck with me. And like while I was underlining the book, I started crying hysterically again when I was reading these things for the second time. And then also like halfway through the book, I had to force myself to stop reading and to go take a walk. I was like, you have to calm down, this is not real. But then I tortured myself even more because I started listening to like a very sad song I always correlate with this story, and I started bawling outside. Anyone that saw me was like, oh, is she okay? I was just like bawling, crying my eyes out while walking through the neighborhood. And also I finished this book on Valentine's Day, which is supposed to be a day of love, for Christ's sake, not for gut-wrenching pain. So I spent my Valentine's Day crying, bawling my eyes out in my bed because of this book. So do with that information what you will, but if you have similar reading taste as me, I strongly urge you to pick this up because this is going to haunt me forever, and I really hope it can do the same for you. Pick it up. Okay. In the meantime, my camera died, so I was like, well, the rain cleared up, the sun's out, this is the perfect time for a walk. So I was charging my camera, I went for a walk, and then afterwards I locked myself out of the house because I forgot to bring a key. So lots has happened in the meantime. We had a quick interruption. I'm sorry for the chaos. I'm also sorry for the constant change in lighting because I use natural lighting. So I can only work with what God gives me. Anyway, we're back and I'm going to continue talking about the books that I've read. I still have an hour and a half before the sun goes down, so we should be good in that department. But I don't know exactly where I left off. So I just wanted to continue talking about if only I had told her for a bit, because I just wanted to say a few more things. Like I said, I was bawling at 2 AM about this book and crying my eyes out. I look horrible, but it's 2 in the morning and I cannot for the life of me stop crying. And then I went to sleep and the next morning I woke up and the first thing I felt was a stomach ache, just because of how much emotion I felt towards this book. And I still don't feel like I can move on from Finny, but I do love the fact that we got this story even though it wasn't planned, because it made for a much better and well-rounded story, and it just gave me so much more chance to connect to the characters. And if it wasn't clear already, this was a 5-star book to me. It might actually be one of my 6-star books just because of how much it made me feel and how much pain it caused me. So highly recommend. Next, I read Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home by Chester Hastings. This is the 3rd book in the Magnolia Park series. This is Magnolia and BJ's 2nd book. I wanted to reread this one because Magnolia Park's Into the Dark was coming out, and it had been a while since I read all of these books because I read them back to back in like the beginning of last year. And so I just wanted to make sure that I did not miss anything plot-wise. So I reread this one. It was just as good as the first time. I loved it so much, and I also loved rereading like everything I had underlined and reading my own annotations. It was so fun, and this sentence just always does it for me. He laughs and for some reason it sounds like I'm ringing the doorbell of the home I grew up in. If that is not like the perfect sentence to go with like the childhood friends to lovers trope, I don't know what is. And everything I underlined so many things. I wish I could show you everything I underlined. But I loved this book. This is probably my favourite of the whole entire Magnolia Park series, or maybe Into the Dark, I don't know. I'm going to talk about that one in a second. This one has the most, I think, growth of their relationship in the most toxic way as well, because Into the Dark is like the first book where they have like a healthy-ish relationship for the first time, but this book was so needed to get there, and so much happened in this one, and it was so entertaining, so heartbreaking, and so you learned so many things about the couple in this book, and I cannot recommend this series enough. So this was a 5-star book again, and I love this couple so much, even though they are so incredibly toxic, and I completely understand why so many people dislike them. I love them, can't help it. And then next I read Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. I don't have the physical copy because I lent it to a friend and then she forgot to give it back before she went to Spain, so I don't have it here. However, I do have everything I thought in my notes app, and it's so long, so I'm going to work my way through it. I loved being in this universe again, and like I can't tell you what happened in case you want to read the series and you don't know what happens, but something happens at the end of Magnolia Park's Long Way Home, and it's very traumatic and it changes everyone's lives. And in this book you kind of see the aftermath of that and just how everyone deals with what happened in their own way. And both of our main characters are struggling a lot, but at the same time they're like happy and together for the first time in years. So this book contains a lot of joy and also a lot of pain, and this book also made me bawl my eyes out.
I'm not okay. I'm not okay.
However, I did think the first like 150 pages, the writing style felt completely foreign to me. And for some reason, I just couldn't connect to the first part because it was really, really noticeable to me that Jessa Hastings had to get back into the groove of writing the Magnolia Park series. And I don't know, maybe she wrote Never in Between or something, but the first 150 pages kind of didn't feel as if they were part of the same series writing style-wise. However, after like 150 pages, she completely got her groove back and it was one of my favorite books in the series. So I might have imagined that, but two of my friends who I was buddy reading it with kind of thought the same. So I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but as soon as I got like to the 200 page mark, I was completely in love again. And also I want and need, like I need a book about Henry, like I need oxygen. Like I love him so much and I need him to get his own book, and I'm so scared that he's not going to get his own book. And I really, really, really need Jessa Hastings to write that specifically for me. Like if she's not planning on doing it, I need her to do it for me anyway. Like I swear to the gods in the heavens, if I don't get my Henry books, Jessa will rue the day. Okay, moving on. I loved getting to see Magnolia and BJ as a mundane couple because up until this point it was always like very extremely toxic, but at the same time they're like supposed to be together, you know? So I loved seeing them as a mundane couple and it made me fall in love with them even more. And BJ had so much character development, like in between The Long Way Home and Into the Dark. So I loved that. And also the little part with Julian, if you've read the book, you know, the little part with Julian in the car, like it plays on my mind on a loop, like on a loop. I am thinking about that scene constantly and it was so beautiful and it broke my heart. Just this entire book broke my heart and also put it back together again. And I just loved seeing how good Magnolia and BJ actually are as a couple, because in the other books we had just seen them fight and just try to hurt one another and just pining after each other and etc. And in this book we actually got to see them in a relationship and how good they are together, because in all the other books we were constantly told how good they used to be together and like how good of a couple they were, and we never actually got to see that because they were never actually together. And in this book we got to see them as a couple and just see what everyone was talking about all of that time, you know? And I loved that, and I cannot believe that BJ and Magnolia's story is over and I'm not going to get any more of their books. Every single time I think about that fact, that I'm not going to get anything new about these characters and that their story is like over and done, like it breaks my heart and it makes me want to reread all of the books. So I also gave this a 5-star, also 6-star. This is a 6-star series to me, so that's that. And then next I read Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, I want to say? Yeah, Sarah Adams. I don't have the physical copy, I read this on my Kindle. I was in a book hangover after I read If Only I Told Her and the Magnolia Parks books back to back. So I was looking for something like a palate cleanser. I didn't want anything serious and I also didn't want something that was going to ask a lot of focus from me. So this was perfect. This is a second book in an interconnected standalone series. The first one is When in Rome, the second one is Practice Makes Perfect. I read When in Rome last year, I think. The lighting changed again. I'm going to, hold on. Yeah, I don't know if that's better. I don't want it to be too dark, you know? Okay, anyway. I did like this one a lot better. This book is about Will, the bodyguard of the girl in the first book, and then Annie, the sister of the guy in the first book. So Will and Annie, they meet when Will moves to this town for a while to be a bodyguard to Amelia. They become friends, and then she tells him that she's very inexperienced and that she would love to be better at dating. And every single person in her life kind of sees her as sweet little Annie because she never dates, and she's like she has a swear jar and she's like very sweet and pure. And she's kind of sick of that whole persona, and she kind of asks Will to teach her how to date. And so during this practice dating, they become really good friends, and Will actually turns out to be the first person that she can be completely herself around, and just their relationship was really, really sweet and just pure and very adorable. And there's also a lot of jealousy because then she starts to date other people, because that was the whole point of him teaching her how to date. But then he gets jealous. It was really sweet and entertaining, and I really enjoyed it. This was like the blueprint of the good girl, bad boy, like the good inexperienced girl, experienced guy thing. And there's a scene where he climbs through her window at night and she's wearing pajamas with bananas on them, and it was just the sweetest thing. And also there's a scene where she is sick and he takes care of her, and it was just really sweet and I really enjoyed it. However, Sarah Adams' books are never my favorites, but she is very good. She has no spice in her books, but she is very good in writing like the angst and the pining. And like I said, I loved the relationship and the friendship between Annie and Will, and it kind of makes me really, really jealous that I don't have a tattooed bad boy friend who is actually a big marshmallow to fall in love with me, but you know, what can you do? And I feel like their relationship progressed very naturally, and I just felt like the pacing was done really well, and there was also no third act breakup, which was fantastic because I hate those. So this was a small town romance with practice dating and good girl, bad boy, and a hint of fake dating, not a lot, but I think it kind of did get thrown into the storyline there somewhere. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really sweet, easy, quick, fun, fluffy romance, and I gave it 4 stars, I think. Then I continued reading books on my Kindle, even though I have like a giant physical TBR, which I really should be, you know, picking books from, but instead I started reading Kingdom of the Wicked. This was a fantasy book. I did not care too much for this entire world, but I do also think this was like this is the first book in a trilogy, so this was kind of like world building, backstory, kind of an introduction, and I think more is going to happen in the second book, because this book was really underwhelming to me, and I think I gave it 3 stars in the end. But a lot of the magic in this book and like the magic story politics kind of felt really ridiculous to me. What I did really love is the 7 princes of hell and how they all have this power and they're like ruthless and blah blah blah. I didn't even explain the story. There's the main girl, Amelia, she is a witch and she has a twin sister, and they're both witches, but the twin sister is killed very early on in the book, and then the book kind of goes on to Amelia trying to find out who killed her sister so she can get her revenge and kill them too or something. And then she teams up with one of the 7 princes from hell, the Prince of Wrath, and they kind of start to form this friendship, reluctant friendship, but they obviously start caring about each other. And the magic was fun, but like I said, a bit ridiculous. And I do want to read the second book because I was finally like invested, and I was like, okay, now I really want to know what happens. And the book ended, and it did also end on a really big cliffhanger. So I do need to read the second book, but I'm not in any rush because I didn't love it. It was a bit underwhelming, like I said, but I did really like the chemistry between the Prince of Hell, Prince of Wrath. No, wait, it's not the Prince of Wrath, it's the Prince of Hell. No, it is the Prince of Wrath. It's a bit confusing in my mind. He was one of the 7 wicked demon princes from hell, which, first of all, hot. But you have 7 houses, and his house was Wrath. So we don't know his actual name, we just call him Wrath in the story, which was a bit weird to me, but alright. But like I said, it took a while to get into the story, but by the time I was invested, the story ended. So I wouldn't say I'd recommend this book, but maybe after I've read the next one, maybe I'll be a bit more positive. But some things just didn't make sense in this book, because at like 80% in the book, a vampire just appeared out of nowhere, and I was like, what? I heard nothing about vampires up until now, so it was just, I don't think it was explained very well. So not everything made sense to me, and I also think this book could have benefited from a bit more dialogue, because I don't know, I don't think we got too much of that in this book, and that might be the reason why I was bored some of the time, but their chemistry was really good, so 3 stars anyway. Next, I read a book that I really, really love, which is The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This is the second book in the Windy City series, where Mile High was the first one. I preferred this so much to Mile High. This book is about Indy and Ryan is the brother from the girl in the first book. Indy's longtime boyfriend cheated on her, so she needs a place to live. And the girl in the first book, Stevie, she and Indy are best friends, so she convinces her brother Ryan, who is like the top basketball player, to let her live with him because he's barely ever there and he's on the road and blah blah blah. And so she moves in with him, even though he does not want to in the beginning. He is very closed off and very like on his own, very much a lone wolf, and he is a grumpy guy in the beginning, and she is very much a sunshine girl. So she moves in with him, so it's forced proximity, and then fake dating comes into the picture when he tells his coach that he has a girlfriend, because his coach thinks that he is too cold and too standoffish and too much on his own to be a good captain to the team. And so one time they're talking and he just goes, no, I'm not cold and alone, I have a girlfriend. And he goes, who is it? And she just happened to walk in, and he goes, that's my girlfriend. And so they start fake dating, and like gradually they become friends and they become closer, and they kind of unravel each other's traumas and stuff. And from there on they fall in love, obviously, and it was so sweet, because his love language is acts of service. So he shows her that he cares about her in all of these small ways without her ever having to ask him to do any of it, and it was just I got so jealous. So for instance, she loves flowers, but she travels a lot, so she's not able to keep them alive, and he offers her to take care of the flowers that she wants when she's away, even though he has no idea how to keep flowers alive, and he tries his best and then he accidentally lets all of her flowers die, and then he runs to the shop and like tries to get her new flowers before she comes home, but then he couldn't find the same one, so then he had to come clean, and it was just, everything was so sweet. And also they go to a barbecue and she's a vegetarian, and he knew that there were not going to be any vegetarian burgers or something, so he brings them for her without her knowing. And just all of those small things, he was just a fantastic book boyfriend. Like, everyone told me that, so I was so excited to start reading this book. And they were all right. He is pretty much the blueprint for what you want. Like, Mile High was not that good to me, but holy crap balls, this was really good. And their banter was just top tier. I enjoyed myself so much. And I was reading this so quickly. Like, my previous book kind of got me into a bit of a slump, but this flew me right back out of it. And I was like having visceral reactions. I was kicking my feet, giggling. And I really loved this book. However, during like the end where they got together, it was a slow burn, so that was good, because the parts where they were not together were definitely my favorite. And I think what kind of knocked it down half a star for me is where they got together, and the spice scenes were not my favorite, but I still loved this book. Like, I was ignoring food, sleep and hygiene to read this. That says enough. And I think I gave it 4.5 stars, so I would highly recommend this one because I loved it. Then I read the next book in this series, which is Caught Up, also by Liz Tomford, obviously. This book was about Kai, a baseball player that we got to know in the second book, and then the female love interest is his coach's daughter, Miller. So I loved both of the characters, and I also really loved this story. Kai is a single dad, and he has kind of trouble balancing his son and being a professional baseball player, and he fires all of his nannies because he's just a bit of an overprotective dad. And his coach is sick of it, and he's like, well, my daughter's here for the summer, so we'll just hire her, and you can't fire her because she's my kid. So then they don't really get off to a great start because he doesn't really trust her, but then they gradually become closer, and she's also sort of living with him, so they become friends and they start blurring lines. And I thought that happened in like a very natural way because obviously they're caring together for this little child, and I loved the child. He was so sweet, and I loved their little family dynamic. But what I really disliked about this book is the fact that they kept mentioning every single chapter that the girl was going to leave, and that like, no, we can't be together because I'm leaving, and no, I can't be together, blah blah blah, no, I can't do this because I'm leaving. And I was like, well, yeah, you keep mentioning it every other second. So that was really annoying, and that made it drag on a bit because these books are not small, like they're not tiny books. And so if they keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and that felt like the only thing standing in their way, and so it kind of felt like there wasn't a lot going on outside of that one thing. So that really annoyed me a bit, and I would have preferred it so much more if they would just mention it every once in a while instead of dangling it in front of you like a carrot. That was a bit of a bummer, but otherwise I loved this book. I loved the characters, and the setup for the next book was so fun because the brother of the guy in this book, he has a crush on his trainer, and they're the next book, and I loved both of them in this one, and I can't wait for their story. But back to this book, I loved their family dynamic, and I loved how much Miller, the girl, was getting invested into the kid and to like just their lives. And she had never wanted to settle down. She always wanted to like travel for her work and stuff, and suddenly she kind of became a mother to this baby boy, and it was so sweet how much she cared about him. I don't know, I really loved that aspect to it. However, it could have been like 70 pages shorter and it would have been a lot better because it didn't feel like there was much else going on aside from that one conflict that they were trying to beat you over the head with. And that was kind of annoying, but I really still enjoyed this book, so I would still recommend it. I think I gave it 3.75, 3.8 stars or something because I did like all of the characters. And I think these two books were so much better than the first one. So if you did not like the first one, you can still try these, especially this one. Loved both of them, but especially this one. It's getting dark again. Okay, we're moving swiftly along because I only have one more book to talk about. The next book I read is called Collide. I loved this book. This was a debut novel, and it was a hockey college romance, I think. And I adored this book. In the beginning, I loved the first half. The first half was like 4.5 stars to me, and then the second half was, I think, 3.75, 8 stars. The guy in this book, Aiden, is the captain of the hockey team, and the girl, Summer, is like a very high-achieving girl in the university, and she wants to be a sports psychologist. So when Aiden takes the blame for something that his team did, he is put on probation, and instead of going on probation, he is offered to work with Summer on like her paper or her dissertation or something. And so they get paired together to work on her dissertation, and So it's forced proximity and they don't want to work together. They don't like each other at first, and it's very much reverse Crumpy Sunshine, which I loved. I think that's my like new obsession. He was kind of like a golden retriever, happy guy, and he also pushes her to have more fun and not just work on her school. And I loved the way he flirted with her, and it kind of felt like knockoff off-campus vibes, but in like the best way. I really enjoyed it, and it's the first book in a series, which I'm going to read all of the books in that series when they come out. It's a debut novel, which I did kind of notice because sometimes the flow did not flow very well, but it didn't bother me, and it was a very good debut novel. I think around the halfway mark I became a little less invested, but I was also traveling, so I was a bit busy, but I loved them together, and there was no third act breakup, which again, fantastic. What I loved about this book is the guy. Like, again, he was a golden retriever, happy guy, but he was so ready for commitment, and she was kind of like holding him off, and he was so ready to like be in a relationship and to commit to her, and that was so sweet and so refreshing, because usually that's the other way around. And I do feel like we got a lot more of Summer's background than Aiden's, which I thought was kind of a bummer, because I found his background to be more interesting, but we got to see less of that, and I think I would have loved if they had elaborated a bit more on that. Like I said, I will read the other books in the series. And that was the last book. I'm so happy because this video took me such a long time to film. I am completely, like, my mouth hurts from talking this much, so I'm going to end the video here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching if you watched all the way to this point with the chaos and the rain and the lighting and the just all of it. Thank you so much. And also to all of the people who have watched all of my videos, thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. And I think that's the end. That's all I had to say, and my camera is dying now, so thank you so much for watching. Bye!